Michael Anthony Sanchez. I'm a communications intern with the Texas Public Employees Association. TPEA wants to raise awareness of state employees' accomplishments this year, and so we're interviewing different state employees to find out what might not be covered in the news, but also to get to know these public servants behind these works. Here today, I have Victoriano Casas III. So Victoriano, to start, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Victoriano Casas, I've worked for the great state of Texas for about 20 plus years now. I got started in the 90s, actually in college, working at A&M Corpus Christi, where I got my undergrad. And then I got really lucky that I jumped into cybersecurity with the state comptroller's office. Right now, I'm the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer at Texas Department of License and Regulation. Been there almost 3 years now. And I've actually jumped around. I've been at 6 different state agencies, and I worked in the private sector too for about 3-4 years. Did a little bit of consulting on my own, worked at Deloitte, and then helped out some folks in some sales and startup companies. But I came back to the great state and 3 years ago to TDLR, and I'm so happy I'm here. It's actually a really great agency. It's kind of a medium-sized agency, and it's growing. It's just the perfect size to manage a cybersecurity program and do it well. I worry about some of my colleagues in those larger agencies. I think it's very difficult in the cybersecurity field to manage endpoints, mobile devices, laptops, especially during COVID, all over. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So that's me in a nutshell. 20-ish years, bachelor's in MIS at A&M Corpus Christi, a master's in public administration with an emphasis in government and cybersecurity at Texas State. And I'm trying to think of what else. I think I'm good.
Yeah, very impressive. How did you get involved with cybersecurity, or I guess earlier information security? You mentioned college job. Was that the long-term goal, or did you kind of like find this and then just fell in love with it?
No, that's a good question. I like to think that I got lucky, to be honest with you. I studied IT work. I studied management information systems at A&M Corpus Christi. My job there was helping with multimedia. It was back then in the late 90s. PowerPoint had just kind of come out. It was the cool new thing for professors, but professors didn't understand it very well, some of them. So we would help them with their PowerPoint presentations, with the animations and whatnot. We also helped with all the different media. And so I got to do that as well as my respective studies. Now, information security was not a degree program back then, and not all universities have it even today. Cybersecurity was still kind of fresh and still kind of new. I got very lucky. I was applying for different IT type jobs that kind of appealed to me. And when I saw the information security position at the comptroller's office, one of the things that actually caught my eye was I was going to be a legislative liaison. I had moved to Austin for a couple of reasons. One, because I love politics, and two, because I love music. So not necessarily for the IT side of the house, but I got lucky. I took this cybersecurity position. I had this gentleman take me under his wing. He showed me different operating systems, Linux, and how to decipher network traffic with the proper tools. And it intrigued me. It got me very interested. And I originally had taken the position not just for the IT work, but for the legislative work, because I thought I was going to go to law school. I thought I was going to eventually move back home and run for office and just, help my dad out at the ranch, branding cattle and doing what I needed to do down south. But the IT part just kept moving. It kept intriguing me. It kept bringing me on. And I just got really excited. Cybersecurity was brand spanking new. It was just opening up, and the opportunity was there. And so as a young person, I realized that not only back young in high school, when I realized that computers were essentially the future, back then in my early career, I realized that cybersecurity was going to take off. And darn it if it didn't.
So you are a Texas Public Employees Association member. What brought you to TPEA, and what keeps you around?
Well, to be quite honest, Ann brought me to TPEA. So I had the fortunate blessing to actually work at ERS under Ann's leadership. And Ann, being the first leader at DIR, has always had that IT-centric, but yet that legal that that political kind of savviness that Anne has. I mean, she's not only is she a sweetheart, but she's uber intelligent, and she's just a perfect leader. So she had seen some of my posts in social media where I was trying to attract new staff members to TDLR, and how I left the state, went to the private sector, and came back to the state. And the lessons I got to learn going out to the private sector, and then realizing how good we have it in the great state of Texas, state employees, brought me back. So Ann and I went to a lunch one day and discussed it. And she was telling me all the cool things that TPA does and how they fight for uh, all employees. It reminded me of my days back in student government. It reminds me of the days, even today, I host these Texas government roundtables, and I bring CISOs from different state agencies where we talk and we try to help the new guy out, or the new girl who's new to the state and doesn't understand all the politics or doesn't understand all the things. It's the same thing in TPA, except that it's huge, it's vast, it's not just cybersecurity, right? So I saw the opportunity. It looked like a good opportunity to expand not just my own knowledge, but to bring some of the experiences and some of the stuff that I've learned in my 20 years as a state employee, and bring that back home and help the new person out.
If I could ask something that it might be just a bit discomforting, just about the pandemic, what how that has changed things. Has it changed things for your work?
Overnight, our staff had to go home and work. And we had some folks in our agency who were in middle management that never thought their employees could work from home. They thought that they had to be here at 8 a.m. and they had to leave at 5 p.m. And they were sticklers like that. Now, luckily for some of the other folks, we had already been working from home once a week or maybe every other week or whatnot. So we were kind of used to it. But when at the snap of a finger, we had to start sending people home, I, as a security guy, and my staff had to think, okay, these machines are leaving. Is the data encrypted? Is the tunnels encrypted when they're talking to us? Do we have the proper VPNs? Do we even have the license for that? Our license shot up, our bandwidth, I'm sorry, shot up tremendously. So luckily for us, DIR helped out with covering the costs for that. But yes, it definitely brought some challenges and some changes in a cybersecurity sense. Now, me personally, for my job, I was very, very fortunate that, again, I had already been working from home from time to time. So I was used to it, not just because of my consulting days, but even at TDLR, I had the opportunity to bring my laptop home and work from the house. I had a nice setup here because I used to be in consulting. So I already had a good setup and a good kind of home office feel. But it was different. It was really weird to have me working here, my wife working here, and then my kids doing their Zoom calls with their respective teachers. So even the bandwidth at my house, we had some challenges there as well. So yeah, no, it's been slightly challenging, but again, I look at it as an opportunity to improve, an opportunity to help and get better. If anything, for years I've been teaching cybersecurity courses to our staff members, and I tell people, I want you to help. I want you to think about, ask me questions, if you will, about your home cybersecurity setup. Ask me questions about your kids' social media. I don't care. I want to help you. And you know why? Because I feel, and I think I stole this from Ann, I feel that if you practice good cybersecurity habits at your work, I mean, at your home, you're going to practice good cybersecurity habits at work. And so I want you to use a password manager. I want you to use multi-factor authentication. When I say that, I don't just mean in state government or state entity email systems. I'm talking about your Gmail, your Facebook, your Twitter. You should have multi-factor authentication on there. And if you don't, check it out. It's available to you. If you accidentally get phished and you give up your email and your password to some malicious actor, well, that malicious actor cannot get into your system without that multi-factor authentication. So the cool thing is you're going to know when somebody has your password, because you're going to get a little jingle on your phone saying, hey, are you trying to log in from Brazil? No, I'm over here fishing in the Bay of Corpus Christi. What are you talking about? And that's when you know, uh-oh, somebody has my Yahoo password. I better change it. So, but they'll never get in. They'll never get in. That's the beautiful thing about multi-factor authentication. So what's cool about that is our agency, TDLR, we have a 100% coverage on multi-factor authentication from the commissioners, the state-appointed commissioners, all the way down throughout our organization. 100%. Everybody has multi-factor authentication, And we are very fortunate that that's the case. And it's because of the leadership that I have at TDLR. My boss, Brian Francis, the gentleman that every time you fill up your car with gas or you jump in an elevator, his handwriting and his signatures on every sticker. That guy has given me the power to really push and mature our cybersecurity to another level. So very fortunate there.
And that really just drives home something you mentioned a while ago about all the cybersecurity being the same.
Yeah.
Like your tips to me, a recent college graduate, are the same as they are to the IT experts at your agency too.
Yep.
Why come back to the state government work? I saw you work for Deloitte. There's a lot of people graduate college and their dream is to be Deloitte Consulting.
Mhm.
What keeps you coming back to the state?
I never went to the service, and that's something that I feel bad about, if you will, right? Especially after 9/11 happened, I remember thinking, what can I do to help my country? And I remember talking to my boss, and she said, "You actually are helping. You're doing cybersecurity work that nobody else is doing, right? Like what you're doing here for the state is helpful to the greater good of humanity, and not just in Texas, but everywhere, right? Because we kind of are that role model state for cybersecurity." And so what brought me back, it was a combination of all of that. It was a combination of that warm fuzzy feeling that you get when you walk out. And one of the beautiful things about working downtown, pre-pandemic, if you will, is working next to the Capitol. And gosh, I love that building. My desktop, actually, the background is the Capitol building. When I look at that Capitol building, I get this warm fuzzy feeling of, I did good today. When you walk out of the office, I did good for the greater good of the great state of Texas. And you're walking by these small, medium-sized businesses, and you're realizing that part of the work that you did helped them help others, if that makes any sense. And so that warm fuzzy feeling, frankly, the job security is great too in cybersecurity, specifically in the great state of Texas. Um, I mentioned I doubled my income when I went out in the private sector. It's not easy to convince, Johnny or Susan to come work for the state when the salaries are a little less than they can be at Amazon or Apple or whatnot, right? Especially with those folks here in Austin. But I think what helps is, quite frankly, is having a pension. Nobody has a pension.
If I'm not mistaken, right? That's something TPA is kind of front and center trying to fight for and make sure it's funded, right?
Correct, absolutely. And looking at the numbers, we definitely are going to need some kind of boost at ERS to continue the promise that we made, not just to me, but to the retirees that are there today and to the retirees that are going to be there in 20 years, right? And you want that. You want to have that continuation of that modern workforce, right? By not offering, or by all of a sudden cutting benefits or cutting things out, I mean, quite frankly, you're going to get what you paid for. And citizens of the great state should realize that the folks that work for the state work for you, right? And so having those proper, whether it's the benefits of the pay scale or whatever the case is, having that and making sure that you're getting what you paid for, right? So that when you go and you stand in line to get that inspection sticker at DMV, or you go and you stand in line to get your handgun license or whatever it is, right? Or you're coming to my agency for your barber or your cosmetologist, or even your MMA fighters. You want the best. You want it to happen. You want it to happen quick, and you want it to be secure. And that's only going to happen with the proper staffing in the back end.
I have one more question, but if there's anything else that you'd like that I should have asked, or we want to go back to, we can cover that.
I will say I've always been a fan of Cesar Chavez, and so every office that I go to, I always have this quote that I have. So here in my house, I have this really cool artistic compilation, if you will, of Cesar Chavez. But in my office downtown at the EOT building, I have one of his quotes, and I love it. And I tell people this whenever morale is down or struggling is going on. But Cesar Chavez, back in '84, at I think it was an address in San Francisco, he said, "Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed." You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. And so when I saw President Biden and that bust of Cesar Chavez behind him, that bronze, it brought so much joy that he lives on. And as a Chicano down from South Texas growing up and then coming into Austin, it's a very multi-diverse city. It's beautiful to see the diversity that we have in the great state of Texas. We all know he's, the great boycotts that he was doing down in California. Well, there was a lot of Chicanos here that were pushing for change and doing that. And one of my heroes that I am very fortunate to get to still talk to today is Senator Gonzalo Barrientos. He started in the Texas House of Representatives in '75. He told me a beautiful story of Ramsey Muniz, who ran for Texas governor. Him and all the folks from Crystal City, they had started a new party, and it was called La Raza Unida Party. And they were trying to push this agenda that they had. And it was essentially splitting the Democrat Party in two. Well, they came to Gonzalo and asked him to switch parties. And Gonzalo says, why would I do that? 70 or 80% of my population is not Chicano. I don't cover just one race. I cover the people of Austin or the people of whatever it is, right? And so Gonzalo has some beautiful stories to tell. And matter of fact, I might even see if I can hook him up with you and we can do an interview with him, because the stuff he's got in his brain and the things he did for the citizens of the state, and frankly, the things that he did for the employees of the state of Texas were great, were fantastic. I remember as a young state employee walking through the Capitol and going down up in the bottom of the annex where the Senate Finance Committee hearing room is, towards there at the end. It's right before the tunnel going into the REJ building. I'd always walk by and I would check to see, if the Senate Finance Committee was going on, what was happening, because Gonzalo was always in there. He was always fighting for the state employees. Frankly, we were his constituents, but it was also because he's always helping the little man, and it was a beautiful thing.
Last question. Thank you so much for spending this time. I always like to ask people how we can keep up with what they do, with their, not just what they do, but with their world, so information security, TDLR. What do you read, watch, scroll through on social media to stay so aware of what's going on in your profession?
It's a lot. Recently, during the pandemic, I decided to subscribe to the different newspapers that I felt were kind of struggling. So I subscribed locally to the Statesman. I subscribed to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. I scrolled through. I try to keep up as much as I can throughout those respective outlets. I also listen to a ton of podcasts, and it varies. I love Steve Gibson's podcast. The bad thing is they're very long. They're usually 2+ hours. What's crazy is I listen to Joe Rogan too, and Joe Rogan's are like 3 hours long, sometimes 4 hours long. But I do listen to different podcasts. I get feedback from my own staff. They'll tell me about a new podcast to kind of keep up. And then from time to time, I'll scroll through Twitter and I have different followers. People that I follow. Krebs on security is a good guy to kind of follow and kind of know what's going on. And then I just get different feeds, different email feeds from different cybersecurity professionals. SANS is another good one. And frankly, the state, we help each other out through the ISO roundtables that I run, and we'll come together and we'll discuss whether it's new tool sets or new threats or whatnot. We share a lot of information. The funny thing is too, is a lot of the folks that are in cybersecurity, they're not just colleagues of mine, but they're friends of mine. So, pre-pandemic, I'll throw barbecues out in the back and invite different ISOs to come out, and over a beer and a brisket, we'll talk about cybersecurity over a fire, and it's pretty good. It's pretty fun.
Interesting to hear that that thread brought up of really the social aspect to your years in state service. Of you have people who you bring over from another agency to your new agency. You also I assume you said some of the people working under you now are from that private sector world. So you've even recruited people maybe taking a hit in their
Yeah,
salaries themselves for it. And then you're friends. You're able to go to a barbecue and just talk about, I guess, something that's genuinely passionate to everyone.
right.
That it's brought up there. So that's really neat to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm lucky. I'm actually smoking a brisket right now. I got to go check on it in a little bit, but that blue thing way back right where my thumb is now, that's a first place trophy, smoking a brisket for the first time I ever smoked a brisket
Whoa.
in a competition back in 2005, man. It was pretty cool. So I'm
So
proud of that guy.
so you have award-winning brisket that you're having everyone eat
Yep.
at these cyber or at
It's funny you
cyber
say that because I
cases.
tell people that if you ever want some award-winning brisket, come to my Christmas parties, you know?
Wow,
So yeah,
that
it's pretty funny.
that is very cool.
All right,
All right.
Michael, man, I'm gonna let you go.